The green light that should have killed Harry Potter instead tore through Voldemort's body at exactly 8:47 p.m. The nursery walls shook, plaster rained from the ceiling as the most powerful dark wizard in history collapsed. His wand clattered across floorboards still warm from where James Potter's body had fallen 5 minutes earlier. The killing curse, that unstoppable force that had ended hundreds of lives, had somehow rebounded. Baby Harry's confused crying mixed with the sound of dark robes crumpling, of flesh hitting wood, of evil itself being torn apart. October 31st, 1981. Godric's Hollow, a night when the impossible happened. The Dark Lord who'd terrorized Britain for over a decade, who'd split his soul 7 times to cheat death, was destroyed by a 15-month-old child. Lily Potter's body lay motionless by the crib. Her final act, stepping between her son and certain death, still hung in the air like ozone after lightning. The house groaned, magical supports failing. In 60 seconds, the roof would cave in. But in this moment, in this impossible moment, the most feared wizard since Grindelwald was nothing but smoke and shadow dissolving on a nursery floor. How did 1,000 years of magical advancement lead to this moment where an infant could destroy the most powerful dark wizard who ever lived? Why did centuries of wizarding achievement culminate in a nursery floor covered in the ashes of evil itself? To understand how we arrived at this impossible scene, we need to rewind through blood, betrayal, and the darkest spells ever conceived. In a torch-lit cave beneath Mount Olympus, Herpo the Foul split his soul for the first time in human history. The year was 321 BC. While Alexander's empire crumbled above ground, something far worse was being born in the shadows below. Herpo wasn't content with the 90 years most wizards lived. He wanted forever, and he was willing to pay any price to get it. The ancient texts describe the screaming, not Herpo's, his victims, because creating a Horcrux requires murder, not just any murder. It needs to be so heinous, so deliberate, that it literally tears the killer's soul in half. Herpo chose a child, a magical child whose parents had refused to teach him their secrets. But splitting his soul was just the beginning. Herpo discovered he could speak to serpents, not through spells or charms, but naturally, like breathing. Parseltongue, he called it. A language that bypassed the conscious mind and spoke directly to the primitive brain. The snakes told him secrets, where to find rare potion ingredients, how to breed monsters. His masterpiece was the first basilisk, king of serpents, the Greeks whispered, a snake that could kill with its gaze alone. Herpo fed it a steady diet of dark magic and human flesh. It grew to 60 feet within a decade. Its eyes became weapons. Anyone who looked directly at them died instantly. Even seeing its reflection would petrify victims in stone. But Herpo's experiments would inspire something far worse. The magical community discovered his laboratory after he vanished. Stone victims lined the walls. Notes detailed experiments on unwilling subjects. Instructions for creating Horcruxes were burned, but not before several copies escaped into the black market. The basilisk had disappeared into the sewers beneath Athens, where it would lurk for centuries. Dark magic had been born, not the simple curses or hexes that caused pain or inconvenience. This was magic that corrupted the soul itself, magic that turned life into a commodity, to be stolen, stored, traded. Herpo had opened a door that could never be fully closed. His writings spread like a plague through the ancient magical world, translated into Latin, Celtic, Sanskrit. Each translation added new interpretations, new possibilities. Wizards in Egypt tried to improve on his Horcrux formula. Druids in Gaul experimented with soul-binding rituals. The knowledge metastasized. The knowledge he unleashed would lie dormant for centuries. Most wizards were too terrified to attempt Herpo's rituals. Creating a Horcrux didn't just require murder, it required a specific mindset. You had to view other humans as things, objects to be used and discarded. You had to suppress every natural instinct toward empathy or connection. You had to become less than human yourself. But there would always be those willing to make that trade. Power-hungry wizards who saw Herpo not as a cautionary tale but as a pioneer. They studied his methods in secret, passed down his formulas through generations. waited for the right moment to continue his work. The serpent language survived too. Parseltongue became a mark of dark wizards, though not all who spoke it were evil. It was hereditary, passed through bloodlines like a curse. Families who carried the trait were watched with suspicion. Many hid their ability, others embraced it. Little did the ancient Greeks know what they'd released into the world. Herpo's true legacy wasn't just the dark magic he created. It was the idea that magic could overcome any natural law, even death itself. That, with enough knowledge and willingness to sacrifice others, a wizard could become godlike, immortal, unstoppable. This poisonous philosophy would spread through magical communities worldwide. It would inspire countless atrocities: serial killers who harvested souls, researchers who experimented on muggles, dark lords who built empires on the bones of innocence. Every dark wizard who followed owed a debt to Herpo the Foul. He'd shown them the path, demonstrated that morality was optional if you were powerful enough, proved that splitting your soul might hurt, but it wouldn't kill you, not immediately. The cost would come later, always later, when the fractured soul could no longer maintain coherent thought, when the Horcruxes demanded more and more death to sustain them, when the Dark Wizard realized too late that they'd traded their humanity for a hollow imitation of life. And when Herpo's writings finally surfaced again, they would fall into the hands of wizards who made him look merciful by comparison. The first Ollivander watched in horror as the wand in his workshop pointed directly at the heart of a future mass murderer. 382 BC. The wand was meant for a young witch seeking protection from raiders. Instead, it swiveled like a compass needle toward a 7-year-old boy browsing with his mother. The child's eyes were already cold, already calculating. The wand, elm, and dragon heartstring practically sang in his presence. This was Ollivander's curse and gift. His wands chose their wizards with terrifying accuracy, not based on worth or morality, but on potential, raw, magical compatibility. The wand didn't care if its owner would heal or harm, it only cared about the perfect match. The Ollivander family had stumbled onto wand lore almost by accident. A carpenter's son with unusual sensitivity to magical wood, he could feel the trees calling to him. Knew which branches contained the most power. His first crude wands were little more than sticks with phoenix feathers jammed inside, but they worked better than anything else available. Within a generation, Ollivanders dominated the European wand trade. They developed proprietary techniques, secret combinations of wood and core, methods for reading a wizard's magical signature and matching it to the perfect wand, knowledge they guarded more carefully than gold. But one wand would refuse every customer for decades: the Elder Wand. Made from Death Elder wood and thestral hair, the Ollivanders had acquired it in 147 BC from a dying duelist who claimed it was unbeatable. Every customer who tried to claim it was rejected. Some were thrown across the shop, others found their magic temporarily suppressed. The wand waited, judged, refused. They tried to study it. 3 Ollivander wand makers lost fingers, attempting to dissect its construction. The wand defended itself with vicious precision. It wanted an owner, but not just any owner. It wanted someone worthy of its terrible power. The family developed rules, traditions. A wand maker must never refuse a sale, no matter their personal feelings. The wand chooses the wizard. This became not just a saying, but a sacred law. To interfere with that choice was to corrupt the very nature of magic itself. But they kept records. Secret ledgers noting which wands showed affinity for dark magic, which customers made their wands sing with malevolent harmony. The Ollivanders became unwitting chroniclers of future atrocities. The Ollivanders kept a secret list of dangerous matches. Wands almost always chose owners who would bring death. Not always evil death, they selected. Sometimes they selected healers who would ease suffering, but more often they picked those who dealt in endings. Assassins, soldiers, dark wizards. The Ollivanders noted every sale. Blackthorn wands favoured warriors, those who saw conflict as inevitable, even desirable. Elm chose those with natural dignity, but hidden ruthlessness. Cypress selected wizards willing to die for their beliefs, heroes and fanatics alike. The wand makers developed a code system, marks in their ledgers that indicated concern, a dot for aggressive tendencies, a cross for unusual dark affinity, a skull for those they were certain would kill. But they never refused a sale. The wand chooses the wizard. One entry from 493 AD. Cypress and dragon heartstring to young witch EB wand produced black sparks upon first contact. Customers' eyes dilated unnaturally. Paid in blood-stained gold. Skull mark applied. They knew which wands thirsted for dark magic. Some wands were born wrong, twisted during creation by the trauma of their core's extraction. A phoenix feather plucked during burning. Dragon heartstring taken from a dragon mid-death. Unicorn hair stolen rather than given. These wands worked, but they carried shadows. The Ollivanders tried destroying the darkest wands. They always returned. Burnt wands reconstituted from ash. Snapped wands mended themselves. Buried wands clawed through 6 feet of earth to return to the shop window. Some forces couldn't be denied. By 900 AD, Ollivanders had equipped most of Europe's magical population. Their wands had won wars and committed genocides, healed plagues and spread curses, built wonders and destroyed civilizations. The family carried that weight through generations. They developed mental exercises to cope with the guilt, mantras about neutrality and necessity. A wand maker was like a force of nature. Storms didn't choose whom to strike, but storms didn't keep detailed records of every life they'd touched. The workshop in Diagon Alley became a pilgrimage site. Young wizards travelled hundreds of miles for an Ollivander wand. The family's reputation grew with each generation. Master wand makers who could match wizard to wand in minutes. Who knew your perfect wand before you walked through the door? But perfection came with a price. Every matched wand was a potential weapon. Every satisfied customer might become tomorrow's Dark Lord. The Ollivanders enabled both great good and terrible evil, maintaining strict neutrality while the world burned around them. And in 991 AD, 4 young customers would arrive at Ollivanders, seeking wands powerful enough to change the world forever. Godric Gryffindor's sword was still dripping with Muggle blood when he proposed building a school. The attack had come at dawn. 50 men from the local village, convinced the wizarding settlement harboured demons. They'd burned 3 witches before Gryffindor arrived. His response was swift, brutal. The enchanted blade cut through armour like parchment. When the killing stopped, only a terrified child remained to spread the tale. 993 AD. Britain was drowning in superstition and hate. Witch hunters roamed the countryside with blessed silver and holy water. Real wizards died alongside innocent muggles. Magic itself was under siege. Gryffindor found Helga Hufflepuff tending to survivors of another purge. Her healing magic had saved 7 children whose parents burned. She worked by candlelight, tears streaming as she mended bones broken by righteous muggle hammers. "We need somewhere safe," she whispered. "Somewhere they can never reach." Rowena Ravenclaw joined them a month later. The mob had destroyed her tower, centuries of magical research reduced to ash. She'd escaped with only her daughter and her diadem. "Knowledge needs protection," she said, "or we'll lose everything our ancestors built." Salazar Slytherin was the last to agree. He'd been experimenting with protective wards, ways to hide entire buildings from Muggle eyes. "I'll help," he said, "but only if we're selective about who we protect." But one founder harboured a secret darker than the others suspected. The location came to Gryffindor in a dream. A castle in Scotland, hidden in mountains, protected by a lake. When they arrived, they found ancient standing stones already there. Older magic, druid circles that predated Rome. The land itself wanted to shelter magical children. They built Hogwarts in secret over 7 years. Each founder poured their specialty into the stones. Gryffindor's courage fortified the walls against any siege. Hufflepuff's loyalty ensured the castle would never betray its students. Ravenclaw's wisdom created ever-shifting corridors that confused invaders. But Slytherin's contribution was different. Where the others built defenses against external threats, he focused inward. Secret passages only he knew. Chambers that required passwords in Parseltongue. Wards that could distinguish between pure magical blood and those with Muggle ancestry. "It's for protection," he insisted when Hufflepuff questioned the Blood Wards. "Muggleborns could be spies. Their families might reveal our location." The argument started small. philosophical differences over admission standards. Slytherin wanted only pure blood students. Hufflepuff demanded equal access for anyone with magic. Ravenclaw cared only about intelligence. Gryffindor favored the brave, regardless of blood. The protective wards had a second purpose. Slytherin had been busy in the castle's depths. While the others focused on classrooms and dormitories, he carved out a massive chamber far below. The entrance was hidden behind passwords that would die with him. Inside, he conducted experiments the others would have forbidden. He was breeding a basilisk. Fed on roosters and dark magic, it grew rapidly in the chamber's depths. A last resort, he told himself. If muggles ever breach our defenses, if they come for our children. But deeper down, he had other plans. The wards he'd woven into Hogwarts' foundations did more than detect blood status. They could activate on command, turn the castle itself against muggle-born students, make staircases vanish beneath their feet, seal them in rooms with no doors. He told no one. By 1000 AD, Hogwarts was accepting its first students. Children arrived, traumatized from watching neighbors burn. Orphans whose magical parents had been discovered and executed. They found safety within the castle walls. Hot food, warm beds, teachers who understood their gifts. But divisions appeared immediately. Slytherin's house attracted those who'd lost the most to muggles. Children who'd hidden in cellars while their families died. They listened eagerly to his lectures about wizard superiority, about the coming day when wizards would rule openly. Deep beneath the foundations, something slithered. The basilisk was 60 feet long now. Slytherin visited nightly, speaking to it in Parseltongue. He fed it his hatred along with its meals, told it about the impure blood walking the halls above, about the day it would be released to cleanse the school. The other founders noticed his increasing isolation. His classes grew darker, focusing on curses rather than charms. He taught his students to view muggles as inferiors, magical creatures to be controlled rather than respected, power as the ultimate virtue. "You're poisoning them," Gryffindor confronted him after a particularly vicious lesson, teaching children to hate. "I'm teaching them to survive." Slytherin shot back. "You weren't there when my village burned, when they made my sister drink molten lead to prove she wasn't a witch. She was 11. The arguments escalated. Hufflepuff tried mediating. Ravenclaw proposed compromises, but the fundamental divide was too deep. Slytherin saw muggles as an existential threat. The others saw them as misguided but redeemable. Finally, after a muggle-born student nearly died from a curse cast by one of Slytherin's favorites, the confrontation became inevitable. The four founders faced each other in the Great Hall. Magic crackled between them. Students fled as portraits burst into flame. "Choose," Slytherin demanded. "Them or me?" They chose. Salazar Slytherin's final words before leaving were a promise that would take 1,000 years to keep. "My heir will finish what I started." The basilisk's eyes opened in the darkness, beginning its centuries-long wait to kill children. Slytherin was gone, but his monster remained, coiled in the Chamber of Secrets, growing larger with each passing year. The magical ecosystem he'd created was self-sustaining, conjured rats for food, ever-flowing water, preservation charms that would last millennia, the perfect prison for the perfect weapon. Above, Hogwarts tried to heal. The three remaining founders modified the protective wards, removing Slytherin's blood-based triggers. But magic that old, woven that deep into stone, couldn't be entirely erased. Traces remained, whispers in the walls, cold spots where his hatred still lingered. They created the Sorting Hat in 1012, DH, a desperate attempt at unity. Each founder poured their essence into the artifact, their memories, their values, their hopes for the school. It would divide students fairly, maintain balance, prevent any one ideology from dominating. But they made a crucial error. They included Slytherin's essence too, his memories of persecution, his legitimate fears twisted into prejudice, his brilliant ambition corrupted by supremacy. All of it went into the hat. The hat screamed warnings no one understood. From its first sorting, the hat tried to communicate the danger. "There's something below," it sang in its annual songs. "Ancient evil, patient, waiting. But the warnings were too cryptic. Dismissed as dramatic flair from a theatrical artifact, the hat could feel the basilisk through the castle's magic, could sense its hunger growing. Every year, it tried new warnings. United we stand, divided we fall, but something divides us beyond these walls. The professors applauded the poetry. No one heard the desperation. Worse, the hat was forced to sort children into Slytherin House. It could feel their minds, some genuinely ambitious, others already poisoned by family prejudice. It had to place them, had to continue Slytherin's legacy. The founder's essence inside the hat demanded it. 1067. The first mysterious death. A Muggle-born girl found petrified in a corridor. The professors blamed a poorly cast transfiguration. They didn't notice the spiders fleeing the castle, didn't question why no spell could reverse the petrification. 1098. 3 more students found frozen in stone, all Muggle-born. The school governors blamed cursed objects from Nocturne Alley, increased security, banned certain items. The attacks stopped. The basilisk returned to sleep, its master's command fulfilled for another generation. Every decade, the basilisk grew larger, hungrier. By 1150, it was over 100 feet long. Its magical nature meant it didn't follow normal biological rules. Each year added length and power. Its gaze became more potent. Even reflections could now kill if the angle was right. The chamber itself expanded. The basilisk's movements carved new tunnels. Its shed skins created a macabre museum of growth. The preservation charms Slytherin cast were too effective. Nothing decayed. The chamber filled with centuries of molted scales, each one as hard as armor. 1183. A Parselmouth student stumbled onto the entrance. Young Marcus Selwyn heard whispers in the walls, followed them to a bathroom, hissed the right sounds by accident. The entrance revealed itself. But without Slytherin's specific commands, the basilisk only watched him. Selwyn fled and never returned. He told his head of house about voices in the walls, about something massive moving in the darkness below. The professor, a Slytherin himself, dismissed it as nightmares brought on by exam stress. But privately, he wondered, added notes to a journal that would be lost for centuries. Students reported strange voices in the walls. The reports were consistent across decades. Always the same description. A cold, high voice, speaking words they couldn't understand. Sometimes angry, sometimes eager. Always in areas near bathrooms or water pipes. Highway. The basilisk's highway through the castle. 1201. The attacks resumed with unprecedented violence. 7 students petrified in a month. 2 dead. They'd looked directly at the basilisk emerging from a pipe. The school nearly closed. Parents withdrew their children. The ministry launched its first formal investigation. They found nothing. The basilisk retreated deeper on ancient commands. The chamber sealed itself. Memories were modified to reduce panic. The official report blamed an escaped magical creature that had been dealt with. Life at Hogwarts continued. But patterns emerged for those who looked. The attacks came in cycles, always when pure blood supremacy peaked in the wider world, always targeting Muggleborns first, as if something in the castle responded to the cultural climate, fed on the hatred above. The Sorting Hat grew more frantic. Its songs became warnings within warnings. 4 houses, 4 founders, but one left a curse. Beware the air, the chamber, the whispered verse. Students thought it was becoming senile. Professors discussed replacing it. They didn't understand they were silencing their only warning system. The hat could feel Slytherin's heir approaching through the bloodlines, could sense the inevitable reopening, but it was bound by its nature. It could only hint, never directly reveal. But the chamber was just the beginning of Hogwarts' transformation into a factory of tragedy. The crowd cheered as the 14-year-old champion's organs liquefied from a mistimed spell. The Triwizard Tournament began in 1294 as a friendly competition between Europe's 3 largest magical schools. The first task seemed simple: retrieve a golden egg from a dragon's nest. The Beauxbatons champion lasted 43 seconds before the Welsh Green's fire reduced her to ash. The crowd fell silent. Then, someone started clapping. By the 3rd tournament in 1309, death was expected, celebrated, Betting pools formed around which champion would die first. Parents dressed in their finest robes to watch their children face mortal peril. The tasks grew deadlier with each iteration, as if the schools were competing to create the most spectacular casualties. 1321. The Hogwarts champion, a brilliant 15-year-old named Catherine Carlyle, was impaled by a manticore's tail during the second task. She took 20 minutes to die, her screams echoing across the lake. Her parents collected her winnings, used them to commission a memorial that called her sacrifice noble. The tournament committee met after each death, discussed safety improvements, then invariably decided that danger was essential to the competition's prestige. Magic requires sacrifice became their motto. They never specified whose children should be sacrificed. The death toll reached triple digits. By 1379, 117 students had died in Triwizard tournaments. The committee kept meticulous records: causes of death, time elapsed, crowd reactions. They studied the data to make future tournaments more engaging. The 1342 tournament introduced underwater challenges. 3 champions drowned in the first hour. The audience couldn't see the action, only the bubbles stopping. They waited on the shore, placing bets on whose body would surface first. When the Durmstrang champion's corpse finally bobbed up, blue-lipped and rigid, they applauded his brave attempt. Schools developed specialized training programs. Children as young as 11 were groomed for potential selection. They practiced dodging, killing curses, swimming in freezing water, facing their deepest fears. Many died in training. These deaths weren't counted in official statistics. The selection process itself became corrupted. The Goblet of Fire, supposedly impartial, began choosing students with specific traits. Not the most talented or brave, but those whose deaths would be most dramatic. Orphans were selected disproportionately, children with tragic backstories, those whose loss would create the best narrative. One tournament ended with no survivors at all. The 1398 tournament was meant to be the grandest yet, held at a neutral location, a specially constructed arena in the Alps. The first task involved navigating a maze filled with cursed objects. All 3 champions entered. None emerged. The audience waited 6 hours. Search parties found the champions' remains scattered throughout the maze. They'd turned on each other, convinced by cursed mirrors that the others were threats. The Beauxbatons champion had killed the Hogwarts student with a severing charm. Durmstrang's champion had burned Beauxbatons alive. Then, maddened by what he'd done, had torn out his own throat. The judges declared no winner, then immediately began planning the next tournament. Parents who'd lost children in previous tournaments became the strongest supporters. They formed committees, raised funds. Their advocacy had the fervor of religious converts. My daughter's death meant something, they'd insist. She died for eternal glory. But what glory? The winners were forgotten within a generation, their names etched on dusty trophies, their gold spent, their eternal fame reduced to footnotes in school histories. Only the deaths were remembered, the spectacular failures, the creative ways children found to die. Even the judges weren't safe from the carnage. The 1407 tournament's final task went catastrophically wrong. A conjured chimera broke free from its magical constraints. It killed 2 champions in seconds, then turned on the judges' platform. 4 of the 12 judges died before the creature was subdued. The Romanian Minister of Magic was partially devoured. The tournament continued the next day. The surviving judges voted to increase safety measures, then voted against them. The split decision meant no changes. The Hungarian representative argued that judge deaths added authenticity to the proceedings, made the danger real for everyone. His motion to reduce protective barriers around the judges' box passed unanimously. Schools began recruiting champions younger. 11-year-olds were told they might compete one day, given special training, special attention, isolated from their peers to focus on tournament preparation. By the time they were selected at 17, they'd spent 6 years preparing to possibly die for entertainment. The corruption spread beyond the tournament itself. Schools diverted funds from education to tournament preparation. Libraries were converted to training grounds. Professors who objected were replaced with those who embraced the glory. And while wizards killed their own children for sport, a darker evil was being born on a remote island in the North Sea. Echrisdis's first victim had been screaming for 3 days when something else started screaming back. The year was 1431. The island would later be known as Azkaban, but Echrisdis simply called it home. He'd raised a fortress there through dark magic, invisible to both Muggle and wizard eyes. Inside, he conducted experiments that made Herpo the Foul look amateur. Echrisdis wasn't interested in immortality. He wanted to understand suffering, to distill it, concentrate it, transform it into something useful. His test subjects were sailors, Muggles who ventured too close to his concealed island. He kept them in specially designed chambers, each room a different experiment in human misery. Chamber 1. Sensory deprivation except for the victim's own screams, magically amplified and played back. Chamber 2. Forced to relive their worst memory in an endless loop. Chamber 3. Gradually increasing pressure on every nerve ending. Echrisdis took detailed notes, measured magical energy released by suffering. On the 3rd day of one experiment, something unprecedented happened. The victim's despair had become so concentrated, so pure, that it achieved consciousness. A wraith-like creature pulled itself from the man's dying mouth, born from his final breath, fed by his hopelessness. The first Dementor. The Dementors multiplied with each new death. Echrisdis was fascinated. The creature was despair incarnate. It fed on happiness, leaving only the worst memories. Its presence alone could drive victims to madness. And when it fed deeply enough, the Dementor's kiss, it consumed the soul itself. He bred them like livestock. Each torture session might birth 1 or 2. The creatures needed no food except human emotion, no care except fresh victims. They multiplied through suffering, each death potentially spawning new horrors. By 1440, hundreds of Dementors filled Azkaban's halls. They developed a hierarchy. The oldest were most terrible, fed on so much pain they'd grown almost solid. They could affect weather, freezing moisture from the air. Their presence killed plant life. Birds fell dead flying too close to the island. Echrisdis ruled them through will alone. They recognized him as creator, father, master. He could direct their hunger, aim them like weapons, but controlling them required constant concentration. One moment of weakness and they'd consume him too. He used them to harvest more victims. Dementor raids on coastal villages. Entire populations found catatonic, their happiness drained. The survivors spoke of walking nightmares, cloaked figures that made you relive your mother's death, your child's illness, every failure magnified. Ministry officials who visited never returned the same. In 1489, Echrisdis died, simply collapsed while walking his fortress halls. The concealment charms failed within hours. The island appeared on magical maps for the first time in decades. The British ministry, curious about this new landmass, sent investigators. Senior Auror Marcus Shacklebolt led the first expedition. His report, filed 3 weeks later, was barely coherent. Half his team hadn't returned. The others were shells, functional but hollow. They'd seen the Dementors, felt their effects, understood their potential. Weapons, Shacklebolt's report concluded. Perfect guards, they need no wages, no sleep, no loyalty except to despair itself. Prisoners would beg for death rather than face them. Escape would be impossible. The ministry debate lasted 1 session. The vote was unanimous. Azkaban would become the wizarding prison. The Dementors would serve as guards. What could go wrong? The first prisoners arrived in 1492. Petty criminals serving weeks for minor infractions. 3 died in the first month. Not from violence, it is not from despair. The Dementors' presence made rehabilitation impossible. Short sentences became death sentences. Minor criminals emerged as broken shadows. But the ministry persisted. The prison was too effective to abandon. Escape genuinely was impossible. The Dementors sensed happiness like sharks sense blood. Any hope of freedom drew them instantly. Prisoners learned not to hope. Even hardened auras broke after 1 night on the island. Guard duty at Azkaban was meant to be rotational, 1 week maximum. but the psychological damage accumulated faster than expected. Auras returned unable to cast Patronuses, their happy memories too tainted. Many quit. Some went mad. A few simply disappeared, walking into the sea rather than face another shift. The Ministry's solution was typical. Reduce guard presence. Let the Dementors handle everything. Human contact limited to food delivery. Medical care abandoned. Why heal those condemned to spiritual torture? The prison became autonomous. A kingdom of despair ruled by creatures that fed on misery. 1518. The first Dementor breeding program. The Ministry wanted guards for other facilities. They provided condemned prisoners specifically for Dementor reproduction. The suffering required to birth new Dementors was so extreme that even hardened executioners resigned rather than participate. The new Dementors were different. Bred in captivity, they were more vicious, less controllable. Several escaped during transport, devastating Muggle villages before recapture. The program was suspended, but the damage was done. Wild Dementors now roamed Britain. The wizarding world had weaponized pure despair, but they'd soon discover that some weapons can't be controlled. Gringotts signed the bank's founding documents with a quill made from a wizard's bone. The bone belonged to Emmerich the Evil, who'd led the latest failed rebellion against Goblin freedom. Gringotts had personally carved it from the Dark Wizard's still-warm corpse after the Battle of Hogsmeade in 1474. The symbolism wasn't subtle. This bank would be built on wizard defeat. For centuries, goblins had been denied wand ownership, forced to work as metalsmiths and curse breakers for wizard employers, paid in copper while creating gold fortunes. The 1474 rebellion was their 14th attempt at equality. Like the others, it failed. But this time, the goblins changed tactics. "If we cannot defeat them with steel," Gringotts declared, "we'll strangle them with gold." The Gringotts Bank opened in Diagon Alley in 1476. Its services were superior to any wizard-run institution. Unbreakable vaults, interest rates that actually benefited depositors. Complete discretion guaranteed. Within a decade, every wealthy wizard family had moved their gold to goblin hands. But the goblins remembered every slight, every murdered kinsman, every century of oppression. They built revenge into the bank's very foundations. Every galleon that passed through Gringotts was cursed, not obviously, not illegally. The curses were subtle, generational, gold that carried a compulsion to return to Gringotts' vaults, fortunes that would slowly drain through bad investments, luck that soured when payments were late. The goblins were playing a game measured in centuries. They kept meticulous records of every wizard who'd wronged them. The Malfoy Vault was 7 levels deeper than necessary, punishment for Brutus Malfoy's goblin hunts. The Lestrange gold grew colder each year, frost forming on coins touched by murderers' hands. Justice served at compound interest. The 1612 Goblin Rebellion erupted when the Ministry tried to regulate Gringotts, demanded access to records, tried to impose wizard oversight. The goblins' response was swift and brutal. Every wizard-owned business in Diagon Alley found their credit frozen. The economy collapsed overnight. The rebellion lasted 3 days, not because the goblins were defeated, but because they'd made their point. The Ministry capitulated completely. Gringotts would remain autonomous. Goblin law would govern goblin banks. The alternative was economic apocalypse. The goblins kept detailed records of every wizard's blood debt. The ledgers went back centuries. This family had enslaved goblins in 1287. That one had stolen goblin-forged silver in 1341. Every debt was noted, calculated. Interest added quarterly for 500 years. The numbers were staggering, but the goblins were patient. They didn't demand immediate payment. Instead, they manipulated bloodlines, arranged marriages between debtor families, consolidated obligations. By 1650, most pureblood fortunes were technically goblin property. The wizards just didn't know it yet. The bank's architecture itself was a weapon. Vaults designed to test wizard greed. Protective curses that targeted specific weaknesses. The thief's downfall didn't just reveal concealment, it stripped away the lies wizards told themselves. Many emerged from deep vaults fundamentally changed. The goblins also controlled information. They knew which wizards were actually broke, which fortunes were illusions maintained by loans, which ancient families survived only on goblin sufferance. This knowledge was power, used strategically. Some vaults contained more than gold. The deepest vaults, those requiring dragon-guided carts to reach, held secrets darker than mere wealth. Artifacts too dangerous for wizard hands, weapons from the goblin rebellions, items that technically belonged to wizards but would never be returned. The Lestrange Vault held a cursed suit of armor that had killed 30 goblins. Now it stood eternal guard over Lestrange gold, ensuring the family paid storage fees forever. The Black Vault contained books of magic goblins had been forbidden to practice. Knowledge preserved for the day wand rights were won. In 1689, Gringotts introduced a new service, bloodline verification. Wizards paid handsomely to prove their pure blood status. The goblins obliged, keeping copies of every family tree, building a database of wizard genetics, understanding enemy bloodlines better than the enemies themselves. The verification process required blood, just a drop, but that drop told the goblins everything: magical strength, inherited curses, propensity for certain magic. They built profiles of every major wizarding family, predicted marriages, manipulated inheritances. The goblins had won their war without firing a spell, but a new kind of warfare was about to begin. Tom Riddle's diary entry for June 13, 1943, contained only one line: "I have conquered death." The entry was written in the girls' bathroom on the second floor. Below him, Myrtle Warren's body cooled on wet tiles. Her eyes were still wide with surprise. She'd seen the basilisk's gaze reflected in the water. Tom felt nothing. No guilt, no triumph. Just cold satisfaction that his ancestors' weapon still worked. He'd opened the Chamber of Secrets a month earlier, traced his bloodline back through centuries of records, discovered he was Slytherin's last descendant. The knowledge had transformed him, given purpose to the rage that had simmered since the orphanage. But killing Myrtle was just practice. The real magic happened next. Tom split his soul for the first time, pouring the fragment into his diary. Herpo the Fowl's ancient instructions worked perfectly. The pain was excruciating, purifying. He was 16 years old and had just taken his first step toward immortality. The school buzzed with terror. A student was dead. Whispers of the Chamber of Secrets resurged. But Tom Riddle, prefect and model student, helped calm fears, comforted younger students, even discovered Hagrid's acromantula, providing a convenient scapegoat. His followers didn't know about the murders yet. The Knights of Walpurgis met in the Slytherin common room after hours. Tom had handpicked them, pure bloods with ambition but no direction. Rosier, Lestrange, Black, Avery. Names that would echo through wizarding history. They thought they were playing at dark magic. Tom knew better. He taught them rituals that pushed boundaries, curses that skirted the legal, but always maintained plausible deniability. Academic interest, he'd claim if questioned. Historical research. The teachers, charmed by his brilliance, never pressed. Privately, Tom experimented further. The Room of Requirement became his laboratory. He'd discovered it in his 5th year, a place that provided whatever he needed. Dark books appeared on dusty shelves. Ritual circles formed in stone floors. The room understood his hunger. His second Horcrux came from his uncle Morfin. Tom visited him during the summer of 1944, found the last of the Gaunts living in squalor, babbling about pure blood while wallowing in filth. Tom took Slytherin's ring and Morfin's life, framed him for the Riddle murders. The soul split easier the second time. The first Horcrux was hidden where students ate every day. The diary stayed at Hogwarts. Tom considered it poetic, hiding his soul where he'd first tasted power. He'd eventually hide it with someone vulnerable, someone who'd pour their secrets into its pages, feed it their life force. But for now, it waited in the Room of Requirement. By graduation, Tom had fractured his soul twice, but his real reign of terror was still 20 years away. Tom Riddle left Hogwarts in 1945 as head boy, beloved by teachers, admired by students. No one suspected the monster beneath the handsome face. He'd learned to wear humanity like a mask, to mimic emotions he didn't feel. He disappeared after graduation, traveled to Albania seeking artifacts, Egypt for dark rituals. The Knights of Walpurgis disbanded, their leader vanished. But Tom was preparing, learning, transforming himself into something that transcended humanity. When he returned to Britain in 1955, he was unrecognizable. The handsome features had blurred, eyes reddened, voice higher, colder. He'd split his soul 3 more times. The humanity was bleeding out. In its place, Lord Voldemort was born. The Death Eaters coalesced around him like iron filings to a magnet. His old school friends were the first recruits. They brought others, pure-blood supremacists who'd waited for a leader, ambitious wizards who sensed the wind changing, psychopaths who just wanted permission to hurt. Teachers dismissed the signs as boyish pranks. Looking back, the signs were obvious. Students who'd associated with Riddle showed disturbing changes. More aggressive, more willing to use dark magic. Several were caught torturing animals. Boys will be boys, the professors said. They'll grow out of it. They didn't. They grew into it, became the first generation of Death Eaters, carried Tom's poison into the wider world. By the time anyone connected the dots, it was too late. The infection had spread beyond Hogwarts' walls. The 1960s saw Voldemort's philosophy metastasize through pure-blood society, secret meetings in manor houses, recruitment at society events. The message was seductive. Wizards were superior. Pure-bloods most of all. The natural order had been inverted. Time to correct it. Minister Jenkins found her daughter's body arranged in the shape of the dark mark on Christmas morning, 1974. The girl had been 7, too young for Hogwarts. Her only crime was her mother's refusal to negotiate with terrorists. Voldemort had made his point with artistic precision, the body positioned perfectly on the ministry's front steps, a candy cane still clutched in one small hand. This was year 4 of the war, and the Death Eaters had graduated from targeted assassinations to psychological warfare. They didn't just kill, they performed. Each murder a message, each message designed to break spirits before bodies. Minister Eugenia Jenkins resigned that afternoon. Harold Mincham took power, promising swift retaliation. His auras had new orders: shoot to kill, use unforgivables if necessary, match brutality with brutality. The wizarding world was eating itself. By 1975, paranoia ruled Britain. The Imperious Curse could turn anyone into a weapon. Your spouse, your child, your best friend. Families developed code words that changed daily. Secret phrases only they would know. But even that wasn't foolproof. Skilled Death Eaters could rip the codes from your mind. Families developed code words to detect Imperious victims. The Longbottoms used their wedding song. The Potters chose James's first words to Lily. The McKinnons tapped patterns on doorframes. Everyone had systems. Everyone lived in fear they'd fail. November 1975. The McKinnon massacre proved codes weren't enough. Death Eaters had kept Robert McKinnon under Imperius for 3 weeks. He learned every family secret, every protective ward. When they finally attacked, he opened the doors himself, helped murder his own children. The curse lifted as he held his daughter's body. The Order of the Phoenix formed in response. Dumbledore's underground resistance. They fought without ministry restrictions, without bureaucracy, but also without resources. 20 volunteers against an army. David versus Goliath if Goliath could appear anywhere, as anyone. Even Hogwarts wasn't safe anymore. 1976 started with the Greengrass girl found dead in a Hogwarts bathroom. The Death Eaters had infiltrated the school. Not students, they were too young, but supporters, sympathizers, parents who visited and left dark gifts, teachers who looked the other way. Dumbledore increased security, age lines, identity checks, protective enchantments. But how do you guard against ideology? Half the Slytherin common room wore silver pins that weren't quite dark marks. Technically legal, plausibly deniable. Detention records from 1977 show the pattern. Muggle-born students hexed in corridors. Mudblood carved into bathroom stalls. First years forced to prove their blood status. The teachers were overwhelmed. Some were sympathizers themselves. The war created its own monsters. Barty Crouch Sr., heading the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, authorized tactics that horrified even hardliners. Unforgivable curses against suspected Death Eaters. Imprisonment without trial. Fighting demons by becoming one. Snape ran to Voldemort with only half the prophecy. October 1980. Severus Snape, desperate to prove his worth, overheard a prophecy in the Hog's Head. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Born to those who have thrice defied him. Born as the 7th month dies. He heard only half before Aberforth threw him out, but half was enough. Snape apparated directly to Voldemort, repeated every word, didn't think about consequences, didn't consider who might fit the description, just wanted his master's approval. Voldemort's reaction was immediate, obsessive. He'd created 6 Horcruxes by then, considered himself immortal. But prophecies had power, real power. If someone could destroy him, they had to die first. Simple mathematics. 2 boys fit the description. Harry Potter, Neville Longbottom, both born late July, both from families who'd fought Voldemort directly. The Dark Lord had a choice. He chose the half-blood like himself, dismissed the pure-blood as less threatening. On October 30th, 1981, Peter Pettigrew made his final betrayal, setting in motion the next 24 hours that would shatter the wizarding world. James Potter's wand hit the floor at 8:42 p.m. I never even had time to pick it up. He'd been playing with Harry, making coloured smoke rings that turned into animals when the baby grabbed them. Lily was upstairs running the bath, a normal Sunday evening in hiding. The Fidelius charm made them invisible. Peter Pettigrew alone knew their location. They were safe. The front door exploded inward without warning. James reacted on instinct. Lily, take Harry and go. It's him. Go. Run. I'll hold him off. His wand was on the coffee table, 3 feet away. Might as well have been 3 miles. Voldemort stepped through the ruined doorway, wand already raised. No words, no gloating. Just a flash of green light. James Potter died reaching for his wand. His body crumpled beside his son's toy broomstick. The coloured smoke animals dissolved. Upstairs, Lily heard the sound of a body hitting hardwood, knew instantly what it meant. Lily had exactly 5 minutes left to live. She barricaded the nursery door. Useless gesture. Wood couldn't stop the Dark Lord, but every second bought was precious. She grabbed Harry from his crib. Her mind raced through options. Apparition, anti-apparition jinx on the house, window. They were on the 2nd floor, and she could hear footsteps on the stairs. Harry, Mama loves you. Dada loves you. Harry, be safe. Be strong. She was crying. Harry reached up with one pudgy hand, confused by her tears, tried to wipe them away. Such a good boy. Such a sweet boy. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Stand aside. Voldemort's voice was almost gentle. He'd promised Severus Snape to spare the mudblood if possible. A foolish promise, but Dark Lords could afford occasional mercy, especially when it cost nothing. Not Harry. Not Harry. Please not Harry. Stand aside, you silly girl. Stand aside now. The nursery door exploded inward. Voldemort entered almost casually. The woman was wandless, defenseless, clutching the boy like a shield. Pathetic. He'd killed hundreds of parents trying to protect their children. Love was not armor. Love was weakness. Not Harry, please. Have mercy. Not Harry. Please, I'll do anything. Stand aside. Stand aside, girl. She could have lived. That was the tragedy Snape would carry forever. Voldemort gave her 3 chances, 3 more than he gave anyone else. But Lily Potter planted herself between death and her son, raised her empty hands, made her choice. The green light took her mid-plea. She crumpled backward, arms still reaching for Harry. The boy tumbled from dead hands onto his blanket, started crying. Normal tears for a child who didn't understand his world had just ended. Voldemort stepped over Lily's body without looking, raised his wand toward the crying child. This was prophecy's end, the potential threat eliminated, his immortality secured. He spoke the words that had killed so many. Avada Kedavra. The green light erupted from Voldemort's wand, racing toward the crying infant. And then, the curse hit Harry Potter and bounced back like light off a mirror. For a fraction of a second, Voldemort felt confusion. The killing curse didn't bounce, couldn't bounce. It was absolute death given form. Yet the green light was racing back toward him, carrying something else with it. Something ancient, primal, powerful. Love, not the word, not the concept. The force itself, concentrated through a mother's sacrifice. Lily Potter had invoked magic older than wands, older than spells. The same power that made parents lift cars off children, that turned ordinary people into heroes. She'd weaponized love itself. The rebounded curse tore through Voldemort's body, but he'd anchored his soul in 6 different objects. He couldn't die, not fully. Instead, he experienced something worse. The curse ripped him from his body, shredded his physical form, left him as less than ghost, less than vapor. A screaming fragment of consciousness dispersed into the night. His body hit the nursery floor at 8:47 p.m. Not dead, destroyed. The robes collapsed like empty fabric. The wand rolled away. Where the most feared dark wizard in history had stood, only ash remained. Ash and a strange, ethereal screaming that faded into nothing. Baby Harry's forehead split where the curse had touched him. A lightning bolt scar formed instantly, but he lived. The first person in history to survive the killing curse. A 15-month-old boy who'd done the impossible. The house groaned. Magic itself was unstable here. Too much power released too quickly. Walls cracked. The ceiling began to cave. In minutes, the cottage would collapse. But for now, in this moment, a baby sat crying among the ruins of ultimate evil. This was the culmination of 1,000 years of darkness. Every thread of wizarding history had led to this nursery. Herpo the Foul's discovery of Horcruxes made Voldemort's survival possible. The Ollivanders had crafted the very wand now lying powerless on the floor. Salazar Slytherin's poisonous ideology had infected Tom Riddle at Hogwarts. The Chamber of Secrets had given him his first taste of murder. The Triwizard Tournament's culture of sacrificing children had numbed wizarding society to youth death, made Harry's intended murder just another statistic. Azkaban's Dementors had broken minds that might have resisted Voldemort's rise. Creatures of despair, enabling a reign of terror. Gringotts had funded both sides of the war. Galleons cursed with old goblin magic had paid for Death Eater operations. The same gold that built the wizarding economy had financed its near destruction. And through it all, the prophecy. Words spoken in a dingy pub that shaped the fate of nations. Snape's betrayal in delivering half. Voldemort's choice to mark Harry as his equal. Pettigrew's final treachery in revealing the Potter's location. 1,000 decisions across centuries, all leading to this impossible moment. The wizarding world celebrated that Halloween night, but in Romania, a different diary had just been opened. As news of Voldemort's defeat spread across Britain, as wizards toasted the boy who lived, as Death Eaters fled or were captured, no one noticed the small disturbance in a Romanian castle. A young witch named Elena Corvinus had found a curious black diary in her grandmother's attic. It was blank, but when she wrote her name, the diary wrote back. "Hello, Elena. My name is Tom." The cycle was already beginning again. Voldemort's first Horcrux, hidden decades ago, was active, seeking a new victim, ready to possess, to corrupt, to return. The Dark Lord was gone, but not dead. His soul anchors remained hidden across Britain, in a locket, a cup, a diadem, a ring, a snake yet to be born, and now a diary finding new life in foreign hands. Harry Potter had survived the unsurvivable. Love had conquered hate. Light had banished darkness. But the victory was incomplete. The seeds of Voldemort's return were already scattered. The weapon that killed James and Lily Potter would kill again. The ideology that created Death Eaters would find new followers. Because this is the truth of the wizarding world. Darkness is never truly defeated. It waits, it adapts, it finds new vessels. The same prejudices that split Hogwarts founders would split new generations. The same lust for power that created Horcruxes would inspire new dark wizards. The The same fear that built Azkaban would build new prisons. Harry Potter would grow up to face these shadows. But that Halloween night in 1981, he was just a baby with a scar, crying in a ruined nursery, surrounded by the ashes of evil and the cooling bodies of parents who died for love. The beginning and end of an ancient story. The first chapter of a war everyone thought was over. The wizarding world had learned nothing from its history, and those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. In vaults beneath Gringotts, in the depths of Hogwarts, in the minds of children sorted into competing houses, the darkness waited, patient as a basilisk, hungry as a Dementor, inevitable as death itself. The boy who lived had won the battle. The war for the wizarding world's soul was far from over.